All right, guys, what's going on? Today we're going to be talking a bit of market dynamics, software, and maybe even a little bit of theory. This is something I've had the opportunity over the past probably 2 or 3 weeks to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into. And I get this information a lot from a handful of different sources, right? I've tried to curate the content that I'm getting in a mix of two different people. The first group of people are AI native people who are working for companies, Anthropic, XAI, Google, or maybe used to work at those companies and have gone off and started something on their own, and they're doing podcast circuits or writing blogs. They're writing X articles, actually is a really good way to kind of keep up to date. The other group is actually investors and people who are going on to investing podcasts or finance podcasts and talking a little bit more on the cutting edge and how they kind of see these pictures going around the world, like how things are changing consistently. And the reason I think their viewpoint is very, very important is two things. One, they have a lot of skin in the game, right? It's really easy for an AI company to get in there, or somebody who works for an AI company to get in there and start talking about, oh, how great all of our stuff is and how it's going to revolutionize this, that, and the other. And of course they think that. But when an outside firm, who is an investment firm, has done a bunch of research, talked to all the managers of all of these different companies, and can talk about the things going on across an entire industry or across multiple companies. They know multiple different managers, owners, companies, etc. They're going to be giving you a much more broad viewpoint, but they're also going to a lot of times be talking about their book, right? Or that's kind of the term in investing circles is talk your book, right? They're going to be talking about where their money is. And a lot of these people are putting substantial sums of money. So their money is where their mouth is, right? They're not going to be investing in something unless they really, really believe that it is the future. And it's hard to get an edge in the investing world right now. So that's kind of where this has come up. I've also been viewing it through my lens of the companies that I work with, where I'm making recommendations, where I have frustrations, where the owners have frustrations, and why those frustrations come up. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how this world of software has sort of evolved, but also kind of where we're at and what things are looking like future moving. So just kind of a brief overview of this, and we're going to go through the slides here in a second. If you guys are watching on YouTube, we're going to go on some different tangents, but I just want to kind of give my brief history and how I remember things for myself, right? Now, if you can go all the way back. All right. I am a original real floppy disk, put it in the thing, lower the thing to lock it in, and you're playing Oregon Trail in the library. And it's like the greatest thing ever because, you're in second grade and your teacher has let you use the computers to play Oregon Trail for a half an hour, and you are over the moon because you're losing ox for crossing the river, and that's the excitement of your world. That's software, right? Is kind of where things started. That's kind of where my brain goes. So if we go through this evolution, we have these big revolutionary softwares that kind of started to come out as a subscription service. The first one that I can remember is AOL. So AOL was a software that you would use to connect into the internet. They, I believe, would do it by minutes at first, and so you'd have this recurring subscription cost to use the service. Eventually, these things started to turn into like, okay, now we've got some websites. Websites at first were struggling to figure out how they were going to monetize them. They had all these big booms and busts. You have the big 2001 kind of like web boom, right? Where these things went up and everybody had, pets.com is always the popular version of this, right? Flies up like ridiculous stock. Everyone invests a ton of money. And then everyone realizes like, oh, we're not there yet. Now, the funny part about that was the investment thesis wasn't necessarily wrong. It was just poorly timed, right? The idea behind it was correct, that web and web services and software companies were going to actually be the winners, right? The problem was everyone tried to front run it and everyone got it wrong, right? Like you weren't picking the Amazons and you weren't seeing the Googles, and you couldn't necessarily see those companies born out of it yet. It's almost like the failures and the sacrifices and why they failed and sacrifice had to happen the way they happened so that future software companies could adjust, change course, and figure out how to monetize properly. And then obviously we are where we are now, where most of the biggest companies in the world are generally software companies. Right now, you've got a couple of really good hardware companies that have started to come in and take a big market share. But when we start thinking about where software is going to go, I think there's still a huge chunk of the market, the stock market, the American economy, the world economy, that is pretty heavily invested in software. And I think that that's the number one thing. The more that I do this, the more that I see that area is actually rife for disruption. And so what you're starting to see now, I think, is some people starting to recognize that, starting to maybe pull money away from pure software companies and starting to invest more in either hardware companies or some of these more future-looking things, which we'll talk about in a second. So when we think about this, like when we think about SaaS, right, software as a service, okay, this has been the big thing. I also think that the culture, and I'll speak for myself, but I do think this annoyance is shared amongst everybody. And I can give 10 examples of this, right? But I'll give the most obvious one for me, which is like Windows. Adobe is another one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of things that Microsoft Office, right? Were things that you used to be able to buy a CD, you would put it into your computer, you would use the software, you would pay one time, and now you had the software and you could use, the operating service, the operating system. You could use the software, you could use Docs you could use Word and Excel and, Adobe Acrobat and Audition and Premiere, and like you had access to these things, right? And it worked, right? Now there were some problems with it, right? Updates and, changing codes. And, so what these companies all had the idea around was this idea of, software as a service. So we're going to switch to a subscription model. And now every single thing that you can possibly think of is a monthly subscription cost. And the real reason that they did this, if we're all being honest with each other, is quarterly earnings, right? They did this because before, you had to have one big massive dump or drop. So you would drop a new, Microsoft operating system, a new version of Windows, and it would drop as this CD, and you would get just millions of dollars of sales all in one quarter, and that quarter would look absolutely incredible. And then the sales would get worse the next quarter, worse the next quarter, worse the next quarter as you got further away from it. And then there's this big wait for all the companies to unveil their new product. Okay. And in that interim time, people didn't know how to invest, right? Is your next product going to be good? Is anyone even going to want it, right? And what it did was it smoothed out these quarterly earnings statements for these stocks, okay? So now companies can go on and they can say, oh, we have this many subscriptions. This was our subscription revenue. This is how many people we have. And then if we want to make more money next quarter or more money next year, all we have to do is raise our subscription cost by 10%. And now our revenue went up 10% year over year. And that's how every one of these companies, and you guys are probably like me, you have subscription fatigue. And what that is those are all the pieces of software that you use. Okay, so that's Spotify. If you're a company, there's probably hundreds of these, right? You have a Google subscription, a Microsoft subscription. You have a Dropbox or a ShareFile subscription. You've got all of your CRM subscriptions, your website subscriptions, any applications, any products that you guys have to use, all subscriptions, okay? And I know for Friendship alone, which is not a software heavy business, like a gym is not a software heavy business, but we still had probably $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 of subscriptions that we would have to use all the time. And I remember just like months and months going by where like we wouldn't use that service, we wouldn't need it at all. And we were paying these subscription costs all because at one time we would need to use it a ton, right? And that's super frustrating. When you used to own the software, right, you'd own the license for that. It made sense for me to pay one-time cost of $100 to own the entire Adobe suite and then just be able to use that when I needed it. Okay. And over time, I would earn my money back. But now with the subscriptions and the way that they work, a lot of times it is a losing proposition. Okay. So that entire context is important for us to go into this conversation with, because not only that fatigue, but that frustration with the actual business model is what we are going to be able to start chipping away at. And I think that if you guys are looking at this as an investor, I think it's very interesting to think about. But if you guys are looking at this as an operator and a business owner, I think this is like such an opportunity for you to drive things to your bottom line, to make more profit, to have more ownership, to have more control. And like, same thing, I think all these people are thinking, oh my gosh, AI, everyone keeps talking about how AI is going to increase profitability, how AI is going to increase productivity, how it's going to do this, that, and the other. And everyone has taken that to mean, oh, they're going to replace people. No. What if we can just replace all of these software subscription services that total $45,000 a year, or a lot more for companies that are software native, right? If you guys are a software or a tech company, you guys are probably way north of that, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 a month. So we're talking about replacing hundreds of thousands of dollars, improving quality of use, improving ownership, and allowing things to work natively with our own AI agents so we're faster and more efficient with these things. Like, this is where I have started to get really excited about the future. And the cool part about this is like, the more team you have and the better people you have, the better this is going to be for you. So this actually, I think, helps retention. So something I'm always kind of thinking about as I work with these small businesses. All right. So let's start talking from a small business perspective. All right. There's two piles of things that I'm starting to look at software in terms of two different piles. Okay. The tools where our AI can work with them natively, where it can connect and I can be working in VS Code or in Claude, or even, in whatever system you guys are natively working in. Okay. Whatever AI, I guess, agent system you're working in. And I can just be in my agent window and say, hey, I want you to go into my QuickBooks, pull down my P&L. I need to send a quick snapshot of my balance sheet over to my CPA, pull that down for me, export it all into a PDF, and then draft a email to my CPA for me, right? And my agentic system can just go out, fetch that, and do that. Okay. And Intuit is a pretty good example right now of a company that is, I would say, ahead of the game from a software subscription service. Again, huge annoyance. I know if Grant's listening, he's going to be, he hates Intuit. He hates that QuickBooks is all online now, is all a subscription service. Again, that was a company you used to just be able to buy the floppy disk or buy the CD, put it in, and you owned QuickBooks, right? But they are doing a good job of integrating. Okay. And then the other bucket or the other pile is the software subscription companies that we have that are not integrating with our AI system or our AI tools. And so it's like pulling teeth for us to say, oh, I want you to go in. So I've had this experience now a couple different times with WordPress and Wix. I find that actually web providers, website companies who are making a boatload of money off of people hosting their website and using their software to create a website, and we'll circle around to this in a second, they are like way behind. And these companies are, to me, I would say especially annoying. And I'll tell you why, as somebody who's spent a boatload of time building websites, okay? They know that writing code in HTML and writing websites from scratch is a very hard proposition for 99% of people, especially business owners. They also know that business owners need to not only be able to run websites, but be able to do all of these other things from like an SEO and a GEO perspective to be able to be found locally. And those things are integral to them running a good business. And if they don't have those tools, their website, again, is effectively worthless. So if we take WordPress as an absolutely egregious example of this, okay, their software is outdated, antiquated, not good. Okay, Squarespace is an example of another company that I've used. I've built websites on both that is significantly better in terms of usability and helping non-coders make websites. Okay. WordPress then started doing this idea called plugins or add-ons, where you could start plugging in what I would call are essential features to a website. And again, this is just one of those things that like people have started doing, which I just think is such bad business practice. It lacks integrity to me to say like this is not an included service. Okay. And I know like BMW has gotten hammered on this, right? Where it's like, oh, if you want to use cruise control, that's an additional, upgrade in your subscription service to your BMW. If you want to be able to start your car, use the remote starter, that's an additional subscription service. Like, go screw yourself. That is such a just dick move, right? You built the car with the functionality and now you're just going to hamstring everybody. Like I absolutely hate those people. Like hate whoever sat in that office and had that idea. Those people just need like a triple punch in the face. They are such losers and I hate them, right? Take all of that, okay? And those ideas, those people, those companies, those are the ones where like, we're going to use AI and just completely delete those people from the business world as they deserve to be deleted because that's how they chose to run their business. Okay. So let's take that as our two buckets. Okay. Companies that are integrating well with your AI and companies that are not. Okay. Sorry, I got off of I get hot talking about that stuff. All right. So let's start kind of thinking about this, right? What we want to do, and I talked about this in my blog post on Tuesday. I highly recommend reading that. That's a very important post to become a super user in Claude. But we need to own the folder set. Okay. And I think a lot of people who are still using web-based AI are going to run into this issue, and it's going to be a nasty wake-up call if and when it happens. Okay. There is a future that's not too distant where these AI companies are going to have to start to make decisions on a financial perspective, right? But also what's best for their company on how they are going to operate, how they're going to monetize, especially with these upcoming IPOs. Okay. So I know just this year you've got Databricks, you've got Claude or Anthropic, you've got XAI and SpaceX, you've got a handful of other smaller companies all trying to go public this year. That's when then these quarterly earnings calls start going public and live. That's when then they have to start figuring out how they're monetizing, how they're driving revenue. Okay. So what you're going to start to see is we need to be engine agnostic. All right. There are a lot of open source models right now that are effectively free to use that we can shift our model over to if, let's say Anthropic, or let's say, because I'm using Claude and I use Claude the most right now, let's say they just change their pricing model and it becomes one of these egregious price gouging, crazy things to be able to continue to use their service. Hey, cool. I own my folder set. I own my brain locally on my external hard drives on my computer. I own them. They're mine. I can point any system, any engine, any AI to that brain and just continue working. Now, the intelligence might not be as good, and I might see some drop-offs or some changes in that capacity. But what we're going to see over time is the free open source versions will catch up to where the high-end paid versions are now, and they might just be on a 6 to 12 month lag. Okay. So we're getting there, right? And where this future can kind of go is if you want to be on the cutting edge, you're going to have to pay to use, Grok or Claude or, ChatGPT or Gemini, whoever is at the absolute cutting edge. You're going to have to pay, and maybe pay a lot, to be able to use those really, really high ends. And you're going to be able to do stuff that other people won't. But not everybody needs that, right? As a small business who's maybe not trying to do, reinvent the wheel or drive, trying to get people to Mars, we probably don't need the same compute power that the SpaceX team needs to be able to launch data centers in space and people to Mars and do like advanced telemetry and all that stuff. Like, we probably don't need the same compute power for us to be able to like whip up a CRM to help send blast emails to our clients, right? So this is why we need to build things the way that I've been trying to encourage you to think about building them. We need to own those folder sets, have those things locally, have a series of markdown files and, Claude.md and, our brain trust files there that can then be shifted and moved however and whenever we need them, okay? Now, if our software that we already use in our organizations is not native, they are behind the curve at this point. If they don't have, MCP or some way for your AI agents to be able to just go grab data or upload data or push things live, right? Like, I use Netlify to host my website, and their CLI and their MCP that allows my AI to just work natively. That means I can push websites like what you guys are watching these slides on right now is just on my website. And I can push that stuff live in moments from my cell phone, which is remotely into my AI system, right? Like, I can do all that stuff. I can push things live to my website. I can say, hey, build me a perfectly optimized Google ad landing page for this new ad campaign that we want to run. I can do it from my cell phone. And it can go in, my AI agent can go into Netlify and push the website live, and I can have it all hosted and ready to go, okay? That is an example of a system that works in natively. Not all softwares are going to do that, right? Wix is trying to catch up to speed. They'll let you do some stuff. WordPress is behind, clunky, outdated. Shopify is pretty good. Squarespace somewhere in the middle. But like, not every service, not every hosting service, and not every web service is going to allow you to do that. So again, what I would encourage you to get to is own your HTML website, like build your website in code from scratch and just own it in your own folder set. It's backed up 3 or 4 different places and it's hosted live, right? You have a GitHub backup, you have all this stuff and you own it, right? You don't have to pay WordPress. You don't have to pay Squarespace or Shopify. You don't have to pay any of those rips or fees, because guess what? Next year, they're going to raise the rates on you. It's going to go up. The rip that they take on transactions is going to go up. There's all of these things now that you can just create your own code for, and your agents can work with you, and then they can push things live in real time, and you just don't need those services anymore. I think that's such an easy place for everybody to start, especially if you already have a good website that's hosted locally. Like, if you put that website right into Claude Design, download those files and put it right into your agent, you can basically recreate your website that you own 100% of. You have no ongoing subscription costs, no ongoing costs at all, hosted at Netlify for free or for $9 a month. And all of a sudden you took this thing that was costing you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year, and you had to go to some third-party company and rely on them to host everything. And now you just took complete ownership of it forever, and you cut your costs, and you just take that straight to the bottom line. And in reality, what's going to happen is your website's going to be 10 times more powerful, because your AI agents are going to be able to analyze and read your site for SEO and GEO in real time. You're going to be able to say, hey, I want to be able to run this ad campaign, or I want to be able to create this landing page. I want to do better for local SEO. We're going to go national, or, I want to start hitting in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we're looking at a new location. It can do all that stuff in real time for you, and none of those other web providers allow you to do that. So As we start kind of moving on to this idea or this mental framework, what I want to start getting to is all of our systems are hooked up and dialed in with our agent, and our agent knows all of that, right? It has all the connections, but it also knows our entire organizational frame. We use this, a new lead comes into the website, they go where? They go into this CRM, the CRM is connected in, and I can text message them back, email them back, we can set up automations, we can do whatever. I can do all that stuff just right from one window. I pull up my VS Code, and now I have access to everything. All of our QuickBooks, all of our Gusto, all of our payroll, all of our expenses, all of our invoices, everything just from my one VS Code window. Okay. All of my file share, all of my entire Google suite, all right there. I can, edit Google Sheets. I can update the website and do it all from one terminal. And that's what I say here. There's a new way. It's one spot, one agent, or one question. And we are often operating and running our entire organization from one place. That's where we've got to get to. But we need software that allows us to do that. Okay. So MCP is the standard outlet for AI. All right. So if we start thinking about this, it's a good practice for us as we start looking at building out our AI systems and integrating those with software of going on to Google and just saying, does Gusto have an MCP setup or an MCP hookup? Do they have that? The answer is yes, great. And then you can go into your AI agent system and say, hey, I want to hook up to Gusto so I can run payroll and get down information on hours and all this other stuff from my employees. What's my tax burden, right? I want to send this out to my CPA. Where, some COVID happens again. We need to operate for PPP. Help me set up the paperwork and tax documents for that. All that stuff can be done, okay? Some companies are there. Most of your forward-thinking good companies are going to have this set up already, but not everybody does. Once you know that, your entire organization, if you have a subscription, if you have a login, you need to go through and do the practice of getting the MCP server set up, telling your agents and organizing your agents in a way so that they know where all those things are and that they are set up and hooked up. So this is as we kind of take this next step, right? As we start to go through this process, what I will find is that if we look at this bottom one, there are a handful of website software subscription companies that are closed out. And you feel like, or I feel like, as I'm trying to build for these small businesses, I'm trying to build something cool and unique. I feel like I'm fighting to try to update things, to make things better, to help them out, they have a vision in their mind of, we've got all this data, we got all this stuff. I want to be able to push this live, or I want to be able to pull down this information and draw reports and build graphs and create a dashboard for this. And I want to be able to do all this stuff. But the system where all of it sits is closed to me. And now we either have to find some pain in the ass workaround, or we have to just shut the idea down because of some third-party company that hasn't caught up to the times. So we need to understand what those are in our company and where they sit in that kind of trajectory. Now, here's where I want you to think about going. And again, this is if you guys haven't been working in the system, this is going to sound overwhelming, but trust me when I tell you, my companies these are not tech people. They are not coders. They are not anything like that. They've already started doing this. Okay. The closed tools, you're going to start to look to create your own local version of, or find a better way to do it with your own local AI system. Okay. So let's just take the example. Let's say we use QuickBooks for all of our tax organizing, and that's our software. Okay. And let's say they did not have the MCP hookup and they didn't have a connection within my AI agentic system. What I would start to do is maybe using Google Sheets or Excel or something like that. I would start to work with my agent to basically recreate my own version of QuickBooks. And again, you could do this anyway if you're paying a boatload of money to QuickBooks. Now, my QuickBooks is $20 a month, so it's not a big deal. But If you guys are a much bigger company, like a C corp, multiple locations, multiple entities, all that stuff, maybe you are spending a lot of money there, and there's a lot of functionality in those big systems that you don't need. You're paying for them to update stuff that you're not going to use. So then you can just start picking and pulling all of the little functions. Okay, I want this to be able to pull down my credit card statements. Can I MCP and pull down my credit card statements from my bank account? Like, sure. Okay. And you can start doing all this linking and connecting. You can create your own software for your company that you own. And again, take out a subscription cost. Now, that's not a great example because QuickBooks does allow you to do that. So that's going to be something we're going to push to the future that maybe we'll do sometime in the future. Maybe we won't. What we want to do is take the stuff like websites that I was telling you about, the things that are closed to you, where our agent can't talk to it. Our agent can't do the tasks or can't do the ideas because the system doesn't allow us to work with them. And I've seen this with CRMs, especially I've seen it with websites. I've seen it with little pieces of code. So even things like now some of the design suite in Adobe is like they're kind of getting there. Some people are using things online. Figma is a good example of this, trying to get there quickly. And so this is how I'm kind of recommending people triage this. Green software is stuff that like my AI agent can work so well with it right now that I actually am getting so much more out of this subscription that I've been holding forever that now I'm using it all the time. And my agents are in there every day and I'm using it a ton because now my agentic system helps me use all this stuff together in one place. And I'll be able to pull better data from there. And so that's like green. It's made better by the use of AI. Yellow is maybe there's some connections. Maybe I can kind of pull down data and I can kind of aggregate certain things, but maybe I can't do everything that I want to do. And red is they are not ready at all. There is no connection. It's not good. And they're blocking me from it. And in that case, those are the things we're going to try to delete and recreate specifically what we need from them on our own locally. And this is where like things are trippy for people because you can just write your own software, right? Like you can just host your own web-based platforms for your team. Again, and it's a lot easier than you think it is. So, if we're kind of going through this like mental process, right? The thing I'll kind of end on here is I want you to think about owning your system. All right. And if we circle back real quick to like an investing thesis, right? From that lens, I think what you're starting to see is a lot of these top investors have started to recognize this. And there's a lot of companies out there that are just pure software and pure subscription companies. I think they face a really, really tough road ahead. It's not impossible for them because I think a lot of them have really good moats, right? Like they have so much data and they have so much, it's like the app that people just always go to. So take like Instagram, for example. Like I hate Instagram. I think Instagram is a terrible app, right? I think AI is going to make it significantly worse. It's already really bad. So many sponsored posts all the time. You see more sponsored posts than you see posts of your friends. So it's a bad product already. And then now the paid posts and the sponsored posts are all going to be AI and it's going to flood you and it's going to be more. So I think people are going to be less likely to be on there. I think that's a huge headwind for Meta. I don't know how they fix that, right? I think more people are just going to be dumping more money to them in the short term, but eventually people will just realize like this just isn't working anymore. So they're going to stop spending on ads on the platforms. And then I think all of these subscription software companies that are starting to charge egregious prices, right? I even think like our CRM for friendship is a company called PushPress, and their functionality 10 years ago, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe that's too long, to 8 years ago, was plenty to run our gym today and plenty to run our gym really forever forward. Now they got invested in by venture capital and they were super excited about all this stuff. But then what does that mean? Okay, so now we have to start pushing all of these different updates and all this stuff. And like, honestly, none of them have mattered much, right? Like they don't do anything. They're just bells and whistles to show, oh, look at the new development that we have. Like, cool. Oh, and by the way, your rates are going up 25% this year, right? So something that used to cost us like $40 now costs us $250 over 8 years, right? Because it's just been like, oh, well, we took on all this venture capital money, so now we have to show increased revenue. And to show the increased revenue, look at all these new features that we are pushing all the time. And you're like, but it's all crap. I don't need it, right? So in my mind now, the way that I look at this is like, could I just recreate the really super simple like version 1 of PushPress that just does exactly what I need and gives me the reports exactly the way that I need them and nothing else? And the answer is yeah, really easily. And if it's going to mean that I can save $5,000 a year or $10,000 a year, why would I not do that as an owner? And it might not be like my priority, but when I get a little time and the AIs get a little better and I'm just slowly stepwise working towards this, why would I not just recreate it? And again, I think when you start looking at that as just a person or an investor, just looking at the economy, that's the kind of stuff where I think people are like, oh man, like so much is going to change and just nobody has any idea. And I can see a future where it's like, you have an idea for an app or you have something that like you want to create, you just go to your agent, you create the mobile app, you put it right onto your phone. It's, just a locally hosted thing, and your AI agent can interface with it. And it's like, you've just got it and you own it. You don't need to put it on the app store. You don't need to sell it to other people. It just does what you want it to do. And because the AIs are going to be so good at creating these things, it's going to work like a charm. So this is where I think things are going, and this is where I think the revolution to me is really starting to hit, is this is going to be very, very disruptive in ways that I think are really, really good for the user, so for the clients, and for the business owners and employees, right? And I just think it's better economics, but it's going to shift a little bit from these megacorps, these SaaS companies that I think have gotten honestly just cocky and egotistical with their price raises and their gatekeeping. Every one of them is like, oh, you want that feature? Here's our next tier. Like, let's take Amazon for TV. It's like, oh, you want Prime Video? Like, how about Prime Video with less ads? A little more. How about Prime Video with no ads? A little more. How about Prime Video in high definition with no ads? A little more. It's like you guys are just dicks, right? Like, you're just dicks. Like, I mean, I get it from the business end of things, but like, they have coming to them, I think, something that's going to be very disruptive, and I'm not entirely sure that they are ready for it. So that's where I think kind of things are going. And again, I think all of that is good, right? If you are the user, so in that case, if I'm just the Amazon Prime viewer, and I just pay my subscription cost and I can just watch Prime Video, right, without commercials, like it just used to be normally, then like I get a better experience. I'm a happier customer. I'm more sticky because of that, right? That's the way that the operation should work. And so I'm hopeful that this will all help us get there. All right, so that's it for today. We ran a little bit long, and I hope that this all kind of makes sense to you guys. But if you guys are a business owner kind of looking at these things, this is the kind of stuff how I want you to start wrapping your brain around how these things will interface and kind of what you can do and why it's important to host your own stuff locally and triage the actual software subscriptions that you guys are keeping. Thanks.